you can probably tell I feel emotional thinking about it. You know, in the moment, just utter devastation, feelings of absolute failure. It's just not seeing them every day. It still breaks my heart. I had no time off. I needed to earn money more than I'd ever needed to earn money in my life. The pain doesn't go away. You just get used to dealing with it. You have to reframe your mind, but reframe that as an opportunity to reimagine your future. It made me also think how important it is to give people a voice. Hello, I'm Charlotte Nichols, and I'm so excited to be on Nurture Your Zest.
Hi, and welcome to Nurture Your Zest. I'm your host, Ashleigh King, and I will bring you a wealth of interesting people with fascinating ideas across the tech industries, the creative industries, and also uplifting stories of courage and hope. We all go through prickly situations in life. I believe that through courage, creativity, and curiosity, you can find inspiration to nurture your zest. That thing that gets you up and out of bed every morning, the thing that lifts you up and lights up your day. So join me in the studio and let's see who we have in the hot seat today. Hello, Charlotte. It's so great to have you in the studio today. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me on, and the studio is looking fantastic.
Oh, thank you. It's really fun because I was really fortunate to be on your podcast, not just once, but 3 times in the last year. So that's amazing. And we should say you've got 2, which we'll hear all about in this episode. But it's been a long time coming. I know we've wanted to do this for ages since meeting. So welcome to Nurture Your Zest. Thank you for being with us. And I'm so excited to talk to you about you and have you in the hot seat and just hear more about your story and journey. How do you feel being in the hot seat, as in being a guest? How does that feel for you?
I prefer being in your seat,
yeah.
if I'm totally honest. I prefer talking about other people. I prefer really digging in. I'm curious by nature, and I love understanding people a little bit more on a personal level, which is what one of my podcasts is all about. I feel a little bit more nervous being put on the spot and speaking personally about me. It requires vulnerability, doesn't it?
It does. And I feel exactly the same. So I love chatting to people. I love hearing their stories. I love helping people share their stories and uplift voices from different backgrounds. But when you're in that seat, it's like, oh, wait, this is actually scary. So I think it's quite good for us to do it as podcast hosts.
I agree.
Because the more you can do that, the more we can empathize and identify with our guests as well.
Absolutely, because you get a little bit complacent and you just think, it's nothing to be worried about. And then it totally reframes things when you're sat in this seat, which, like you say, is healthy.
Yeah, exactly. So I know tons about you. I've been a fan for ages. I watch your show, but I also watch what you do on socials and how you lead an organization. One of the things I'm so excited to talk about is the fact that you've been in business for so long, which to me is just super inspiring because I keep thinking I'm a newbie entrepreneur, but I've been going since 2019. So when I think about it, I'm like, wow, we're still here and we have staff and, there's things to be proud of.
Absolutely.
But how about you? I mean, how long have you been an entrepreneur?
So this is our 17th year.
Oh my gosh.
I know, it makes me feel really old. I set up when I was 25. And in some respects, the years have flown. Some years have lingered a little longer than others. And things have changed so much in that time as well. And of course, I've learned so much. But yeah, I'm proud. And you just keep going. You just keep working towards your goals.
Yeah, it's kind of a reminder how quick time can pass, because I feel like when you are self-employed, because you could be working all kinds of hours, or your balance or your relationship with work isn't always quite right, sometimes things just flick by and you really have to take stock of where you are. And so it's funny you say that, you started when you were 25. I remember seeing an entrepreneurs forum. It was either an old archive or a post someone had put up, and it was a lot of people I look up to, like Joanna Feely and yourself. And I was like, oh my gosh, they've been going for ages. But it was so inspiring to me, as someone still as a new business owner, to see people I admire who are still doing it, so I love that. I guess one of the things we should talk about is, you started at 25, but what led you at that point at 25 to start your own organization? And can you tell us what you do? You know, so if you could share a bit about the business and also what led to that moment at 25.
Yes, of course. So in all honesty, I don't know what truly drove me to create my own business. It's just this burning desire. So first and foremost, my main goal, I was a swimmer and a water polo player when I was younger, and my desire was to get to the Olympics. And that was all I ever really thought about, you know, training, what I could do, what was the next step. And obviously there was school along the way. And again, there was a fixed goal. I always wanted to achieve the best grades. So I had kind of quite clear goals mapped out. And then all of a sudden, graduated university, and I think, goodness, like I need a career, because even if I made it to the top at swimming and water polo, which unfortunately I didn't quite make it, you don't have a career unless you're absolutely, maybe now so when you look at the likes of Adam Peaty, but you have to be top of your game, you know, winning Olympics. But literally I still always needed a career, and I was like, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? I had worked in local leisure centres as a lifeguard, and kind of supervised smaller leisure centres as well. And I'd also worked in the family business. My grandfather set up a home decorating DIY store and had quite a few stores. So my family, you could say, they're kind of quite entrepreneurial. My mum and dad worked, my auntie and uncle worked in the family business, and I kind of worked in there as well. But if anything, my mum and dad knew how hard it was, and they were always like, don't do it. And obviously, because they told me not to do it, I just absolutely had to do it. And it wasn't, and I thought for a while, they thought that I couldn't do it. And I think that was a main motivator. But actually, it was because they knew there were better options. Like they told my brother listened to their advice, find a big company, a big corporation, work your way up. It'll be a lot less stressful. And he did that. But there was something within me. I just had to do it. And I knew I wanted my own business before I knew actually what in and what doing. So one element that I really loved from my degree, which was actually in sports science with management, was the marketing and PR side of the management degree. And so I got a graduate job at a PR agency, a wonderful PR agency in Newcastle. And it wasn't that I thought I could do things better. I just wanted to do things differently. And I did suggest all my ideas to them at the time. And so I kind of just left to do that. I wanted to make PR more accessible rather than fixed contracts. So created the Pay as Hugo. The company's called Harvey and Hugo, named after my two little dogs, which is a whole other story. And I wanted to make it a lot more accessible to people. So started in the heights of a recession. I think it was in 2009. And I had nothing to lose. Everyone says, oh, it's so hard. It must be so hard. But actually, in reality, I had nothing to lose. If I was to create a business now, I would be absolutely terrified. But then I just thought, let's give it a go. If it fails, I can get a new job. I've got no mortgage, no children. Let's just see how it goes.
Wow, I'm like blown away already because I'm thinking of so many things. My mind is going so fast. So the first thing is the fact that you're so detail orientated and goal orientated is so different to me. So okay. I love that. And I love I love the fact that you knew what you wanted to do from such a young age, and you were always driven towards the sports. But then you also did that as a degree and then found other avenues that you loved. I love that you're from an entrepreneurial background and you know how tricky it is for families sometimes. I really think it's interesting how sometimes our parents or the things you tell us not to do are the ones that we chase. So that's pretty powerful. It's funny that you say that if you were to start a business today, you'd be really terrified because, you know, there's a lot of content creators and coaches out there now who are like, now is the best time to start a business. It's never been better. And there are elements of that are true. Like if you look back to when you were 25 and you were starting out, your mediums of communicating with clients and interacting with clients would have shifted so much. So talk me through that then. So you've left this PR firm, you've told them all these fab ideas. Probably might have happened similar for me as well. It's almost like maybe you were a bit of a maverick, or the ideas you had were a little bit ahead of the times, or they were young or different, or and so sometimes people don't catch on to that kind of enthusiasm and passion. I'm so glad you've done it for yourself. But how did you find clients at that time?
It was difficult because social media was just starting to be used on a business sense. And we developed these social media packages, which businesses didn't quite understand. And here was me, and it was probably about the same time as Stephen Bartlett was setting up doing a similar thing, but he was clearly on a much bigger scale, bumping into much bigger businesses, But people, it's hard for them to establish trust with a young person, I find, who doesn't have a lot of experience. And what I would always say is, look, social media is so new, no one has experience in it. And that would kind of help me reframe it. But it was very difficult. I found myself sometimes doing a lot of contra deals. So to get my website created, I said, can we do some PR? Because I also had no money. To get business cards, can we do some PR for the print firm? And so I had to operate a little bit like that. But also, even if it wasn't a contra deal, can we prove ourselves to you? Let us give it a go, see the results you get, and then perhaps you can come on board as a paying client. So there was a lot of kind of scraping around back then. I wasn't taken seriously. And one thing that has changed, I think, massively in those 17 years is, firstly, I don't know, I still hear there's a stigma attached to being a young person in business, but I think being a young female in business, I think that's changed quite a lot. I mean, I remember sitting on boards, it was called North East Chamber of Commerce at the time, going to their board meetings and being the only kind of young person for a start, and sometimes in other corporate meetings, the only female. And sometimes when I look back, at the time I thought, oh, this is just business, toughen up. But when I look back, the way I was spoken to, I don't think they would speak to someone who wasn't young or a female in the same way. So that's kind of one of the negative things, which I think has improved. I was very naive as well. I didn't have a clue about some of the taxes. Corporation tax massively caught me out. And I think running a business can be a really scary place, especially at the moment. There's so many things that, you have to be aware of. And when you're recruiting, I mean, I've hired some absolutely incredible people that have worked for me, and that's more often the case. But sometimes I have made mistakes, and it has really kind of set me back. And not just on a business level, but also personally, you kind of feel personally wounded. And again, being a young person, I wanted to treat everyone like a friend. I've been burned a lot that way as well. So there's been so many lessons learned. And I don't know if this answers your question, because I've just rambled on.
No, it's fantastic, and it's so helpful, and there's so much insight there as well. I think for anyone listening who wants to start a business or wonders what it's really like, or who is like me, has started a business, but maybe things at times have started to get a bit tricky, and now we're like, oh, I don't know if I should have done that, or I'm still recovering from letting that person go, or all these tricky conversations that we have to have. It's funny what you say about young people and the chance to try and do things. There is this curiosity and passion that I think young people have that is so important. So I have an amazing team member, Chloe, who loves TikTok, and I do not understand TikTok. And so I would never sell that as a service or kind of promote us doing that. But she's great, and she has these fantastic ideas for reels and for content, and we don't always have the time to do it, because a bit like any PR or podcasting or media company, you're doing everyone else's work as clients rather than your own fun stuff. But honestly, like, I love finding young people with their ideas and seeing how we can nurture them. It's really beautiful watching. I think this is the thing, there's so much to learn and be on top of now.
Oh, there is.
And it changes with AI as well.
Yes.
So for now, I mean, you talked there about like having to reach out to clients and a lot of contra deals. I think that's so fantastic. That's really brave as well to go, hey, how could we do this differently? It's very much collaborate over competition. It's very much, let's thrive together. And I love that value. Do you think that's something you've always held right from young? And is it something still really important in your business now?
Yeah, I think so. And I don't know where it's come from, but I just always think there's enough business for everyone. There's just so much opportunity out there, and I think we can help each other along the way. And I've always been keen to talk to what some people would deem as competitors, because in reality we could be classed as a little bit of a competitor, but you can learn so much, you can help each other, and there's so much business to be passed around. I think collaboration is really important for that, because again, what you realize quite early on running a business is that you can't do everything, and you sometimes try. But then what I've learned the value of over the years is outsourcing, people, especially to people where they have such a specialism. And you asked a question about channels earlier. There's so many channels, and that has just literally multiplied since setting up. And that's only 17 years. So if you go back maybe another 10 years before that, so much. It's a totally different landscape. And quite frankly, it is overwhelming trying to keep up with every single channel. And I think if you do try to do that, you almost become affected in a negative way because you can't kind of specialize in one area or one form of communication. That said, it does require, communicating on every level. So where I've kind of done that is outsourcing or getting team members on board with different levels of expertise.
Yeah, and I think that's a real key challenge as well, is wanting to help people and nurture talent, but then also making sure you've got the right fit for the organization and the clients you need and the projects you're servicing. People can learn a lot, but you can't teach some of the softer skills. So yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, attitude is critical. And training in the other skills, it can always be done. Yes, certain people have different talents, but it's the attitude, it's the mindset, especially, working within a small business. I think that takes a very special type of person as well, because you have to be very adaptable. Things change. So if someone's not in, you have to take on their workload. Everything matters. Every small detail matters in a small business, but equally you learn so much as well.
You do. So actually I love being a small business owner because I feel like no day is the same. At the same time, that can be so overwhelming sometimes. Yes. And when you have other life stresses that come in, that can kind of derail you.
Yes.
So I guess one of my questions for you, Charlotte, is in some of the leaner years as a business owner. So I'm thinking of Joseph and his Technicolor coat.
Brilliant.
Is that the right word?
Yes.
But Joseph and his big coat. So there's these years of very fertile years that you have great harvests, and then there's other years that are leaner. And in those times, what is the kind of value or kind of, is there a theme that's really helped you get through those times? So one of the things that I've observed of you from the outside in is you are very creative. So, even down to how you send PR proposals, like, this is how we could work together. I know we did one together and it was so cute because you sent me this proposal, but it had flamingos and it had like Harvey and Hugo, the little doggies, but on a flamingo, like a blow up, I don't even know what the right word is, like an inflatable in the pool. And I was like, that is so cute. And just that attention to detail was just really powerful. And it just it struck me how fun and kind of creative that was. So yeah, I've always associated that with you as this kind of word of creativity.
Yes.
And I wonder, is there a value or is there something like that that's really helped guide you? Maybe not even consciously, but that's been there when you've had the leaner years as well.
Always. And there's always lean years and there's always good years. And the Joseph analogy is so good. I wanted to break into song, but I won't do that because that's not a strength for me. One of our core values right from the start is creativity. We have a phrase, challenge normal, because it should always be challenged. And that's how Harvey and Hugo launched, with pay as you go being so different. People said you can't do PR unless it's on a retainer, which, PR, building reputation, it does take time and consistency. So that is true. But if you can't afford that, little bursts of activity are better than nothing at all.
Yeah.
So always challenge normal. I believe there's always opportunity. Even in the really tough years, always opportunity. You just have to change your mindset, adapt. So agility is important, and think a bit differently. Put your kind of perspective, shift it to your customers and what they're thinking about, what's important to them, speak their language. So definitely creativity, and resilience is critical. And just knowing, again, with 17 years behind me, and I know that's not a lot compared to some people, but there's tough years, there's great years. And you kind of, sometimes I know, like, right, it's tough at the minute and we're a bit quiet, but take advantage of that. Maybe you don't have to get up at 5 every day this month because it's a little bit quieter. Because that when it does get busy, you might be back to doing that. So it does ebb and flow. And one thing it's a whole different ball game running a business, having children. That I felt I was just getting the hang of running a business without that. Then all of a sudden, and you always think, it won't change me, it won't change. It does, it has. One of the most critical things in that is the time. You have so much little time and headspace to operate, to do that. Having children has definitely negatively impacted my business as a small business. I would never change it for the world. I'm a much better person having children and I love them all the world. But Harvey and Hugo isn't as strong. I don't have as much time to think about it. I don't have as much creativity or foresight because of it. That'll change again as my children get older. But yeah, it's just always just considering that, you know, where you are now, it might not always be where you are.
Yeah, I mean, that's really powerful, all of that. With the motherhood and becoming a mother, there is something called matrescence, which is your first 5 years of motherhood.
Oh, okay.
And your whole identity shifts, but it's a scientific thing.
Wow.
So we feel terrible and we're like, why are we so anxious and why this? So I was reading about a study the other day where it was saying how some male participants were given a simulated experience of what it's like to be in a female anxious brain. And so what they would do is they would do pings or notifications every now and then of, you know, a thought that might come up in the usual ordinary day-to-day life. So
That's
it could
so
be,
interesting.
oh my gosh, I didn't buy my mother-in-law a gift from my husband for their birthday, you know, or I didn't sign those forms for the school, or I you know, even though it might be for a deadline not till 6 months later, or and it was the constant switch tasking. And what they found in this study is that actually many of the participants actually had to end the study after a week because they were developing so much anxiety and they were really struggling.
Interesting.
And it was so funny because it just like your life just changes. But I think also because we're both self-employed, there is that element of trying to navigate becoming a mum, but also knowing you've got to check emails. And so you might be breastfeeding or doing whatever, but you now have to like try and pay wages and you know, sign off on decisions. And that's quite a journey in itself. And then coming back, maybe the space isn't what it used to be, or how can you have strategy and how can you be so clear and have clarity on where you're going when you're still trying to figure out what on earth just happened, you know, you're still overcoming a trauma that's happened to your body.
Definitely.
It's just such a weird experience.
It's difficult. And, you know, there's that saying of sleep when the baby sleeps. As a business owner, you work when the baby sleeps and you're already absolutely exhausted. And you have this new little bundle of love, joy, everything you'd ever dreamt of. For me, I did. I know it's different experience for different people. But you also have this team that are kind of like a family that you still need to nurture and care for, but you don't have the time you used to give them that. And then on top of everything, your identity has shifted. Like, who am I now? You know, and culture has always taught us that, you know, you kind of can't be everything, and you can't be a really good mum as well as a really good business owner. And so you're stuck thinking, well, what am I? And then I think there's an identity shift when you do create a business, again, that you have to change to. So you might have just adapted to that. Then suddenly you're a mother as well as a business owner. And then I think I was just getting the hang of that. And I had a 1-year-old at the time when suddenly I'm thrust into this new situation where I'm a divorcee. I'm now single, mostly a single parent, business owner. And to be honest, I'm still figuring that identity out. It's just that there's a lot going on. And it's interesting about those little pings of anxiety and the thoughts that you have to constantly go through in your mind. My mind, I feel, is constantly near full. And sometimes it takes a really stressful situation, it just overflows. And you're just like, well, what do I do here? But you just have to keep going.
Yeah, I think that's so important because sometimes when you are self-employed, you don't get the holidays or the breaks.
No.
So out of interest, when your mind is so full, how do you empty it? Like, what's your route? Because I know you're a former swimmer and you did water polo and stuff. Is the pool somewhere you still go to kind of empty your head?
I do actually. And I find it like therapy, the repetitive nature of, you know, swimming up and down the pool, because obviously I don't need to think about the actions now because they're just ingrained in me, well over my 10,000 hours and that. Yeah, it helps me. Same with running. I do less running these days because of my knees. But yeah, exercise is incredibly important for me, more for my mental health than my physical health. De-stressing, filtering things, headspace, sometimes driving and with no sound on, no podcasts, no radio. And I could be my own worst enemy because I'm so thirsty for knowledge all the time. I'm always listening to things, listening to podcasts, trying to learn. But then that fills my head up too. So sometimes I just have to have nothing on. And sometimes just peace. Walks in nature as well. That really helps me. And dogs, animals. Like the business is named after my 2 border terriers who unfortunately aren't around anymore. But animals, they're so, I don't know, intuitive, calming. Whenever I used to be stressed, Harvey and Hugo, I'd get them round, I'd just let them to lie on my chest. my children, they can create induced stress and they can also help relieve it.
I know there's something about sniffing their little heads just makes you feel so safe, and it must be a biological thing, but it's so calming.
I know.
Yeah.
Holding them, especially when they're deep in heavy sleep.
Yeah.
They're just like a dead weight in your arms. It's lovely to hold them.
And it's that funny thing where you don't know when it will be the last time you hold them like that, and they all of a sudden just so big, and you think, what happened?
I know. My eldest turned 7 on Sunday.
Oh my gosh.
And I couldn't tell you where those 7 years have gone. Yeah. It's just been an absolute whirlwind. So yeah, that's one thing I always try and do, is not to take anything for granted, and always try and be grateful, no matter how challenging things can be, whether in business or in your personal life, to try and be grateful for sometimes everyday things that you take for granted. I used to take, the mundane normality of being a family. Back when I wasn't divorced, I took that for granted. And now I wish I hadn't so much. So now I try and not take anything for granted. We're back to in January, first week in January, and it's back to being crazy, back to rushing about after school, to clubs, to then working on an evening. And I'm just like, oh my goodness, are we really in this? But enjoy it, because I don't know, you just sometimes can't see the beauty of the mundane when you're in the moment.
That's so beautiful. There's actually something I read the other day. It's called something about your viewing window, and it was almost like an invitation to consider that, yes, at this time it's chaotic, it's crazy, but just zoom out for a minute and just view your life through a window. That's and lovely. Just kind of catch yourself for a minute. And I love that. And I saw it somewhere. It was on something probably an Instagram trend. I'm trying not to scroll so much.
Me too.
I loved what you said about spending time in nature and in the quiet and without music or without podcasts, because I'm like you, I'm so thirsty for knowledge. But what I realized is sometimes I numb myself with food or shopping or various different things. But one of the ways we can numb ourselves is with TV or with scrolling or with podcasts or learning, and it's really important to consider what you're putting into your body, and
in
so
that way.
and so actually the physical release of sport and stuff is great, but you're also taking care of yourself and your mental health, which is so good. Our mind, we only have one mind, and we need to look after it.
Yeah, and we need to be in control of it. And sometimes, like with all the scrolling and the adverts that pop up or anything, you're not. The scary part of that for me is you're not in control of the information you're feeding your mind. And it is just like your body. And I think as well, it can be a distraction. And I have had to really question sometimes, why am I so hungry to just listen to other things rather than my own thoughts and my own mind? And I know the reasons why that was back in 2024, going through a difficult time. And literally, I could not have any silence. There had to be music on, there had to be podcasts, I had to be seeing friends. And I had to really kind of start sitting down, think, right, I need to start listening to myself and figuring things out. And journaling I found incredibly powerful. That's another thing I do actually to help me through difficult times.
I love journaling. I think it's so powerful, and especially gratitude journaling, taking the time to write down the tiniest things. It could have been the worst day, but just to think about, today the bus driver was really kind to me, or a lady stopped me when I fell, or whatever. It's just so lovely to think about those tiny, I think people call them glimmers, but the tiny micro things that happen in your day. And what I find is when you focus on those good things, your overall mindset shifts. So whenever there's a dark patch, it's like focusing on those tiny things can help uplift you. But speaking of 2024 and some of those difficult times, I mean, gosh, I haven't been through that myself personally, but I think from the outside in, for any woman who's just given birth to not one, but 2 wonderful kids, but now you've got these tiny people to be thinking about and run a business, and you're going through an identity shift, and then you find that you're going through a divorce as well, that's another identity shift. And in the past, there was way more stigma than there is now. Do you still feel there is stigma there? How are you feeling at the moment about looking back on that year and everything you went through? And anything you want to say that you were okay saying?
I mean, you can probably tell I feel emotional thinking about it, but it's for different reasons now. I'm proud of myself, how I've handled that, how I've got through it. And 2025 was still incredibly tough following that. I do feel like 2026 is my real kind of year to start, rising above it and, leveling up. It's I feel like you can't go through all those painful moments for nothing. You have to kind of change and kind of use it as motivation to help get you to where you want to be. And it certainly has become a fuel. But, in the moment, just utter devastation, feelings of absolute failure. Failure for me, failure for my kids, failure for my wider family. Horrific. And I've done a lot of journaling on it, a lot of kind of therapy, but still, it's just absolutely devastating. Still, your whole kind of future your vision for your future shifts dramatically overnight. You suddenly are thrust into this feeling of worthlessness. You don't know yourself. You lose your feeling of value that you have. And but as a business owner, you can't stop. I had no time off, and I say that, maybe that's perceived that people feel like I say that like a trophy. I don't. I was resentful of the fact of that. I just couldn't. I needed to earn money more than I'd ever needed to earn money in my life. It was all happened during a really difficult time business-wise as well. And then I have these two amazing, incredible children that inspire me and get me through it. But at the same time, not seeing them every day shatters my world. It still does. That's the most devastating part of divorce when you have a family. And I know there's incredible single parents out there that have no support at all, and they would, love someone to kind of help them with their kids. But for me, it's just not seeing them every day. It still breaks my heart into pieces, especially on birthdays or Christmas. So I'm moving on from there. I'm just getting used to it, getting used to the pain of that. The pain doesn't go away. You just get used to dealing with it. You have to reframe your mind into there is no option A anymore. It's option B. But reframe that as an opportunity to reimagine your future. And obviously there's limitations to that, being a parent and running a business, but still, what can you do? How can you reimagine your life? So you have to kind of shift your focus.
I mean, gosh, that's so hard. It's, as you say, devastating, going through that, living through that, and then also still feeling that every time they go to see their dad or grandparents and not being with them. I can't imagine how much that hurts. And when you love these little people and you're like, I just want to make memories with you, I think one of the things that I'm hearing from what you're saying there is I'm also hearing a lot of striving of this, this is my year, 2026 is the year I level up. And I just want to say, I think you're amazing already. So any leveling up you do it for you, do it to whatever nurtures your zest, whatever brings you joy, whatever brings you life, whatever brings you the things you want. So the business opportunities you want that take you to where you want to go. But I think as well, what you've said of going through this sense of losing your worth and your value, and how could this happen? How could it happen on my watch? What did I do wrong? Things change, life changes. It's so difficult. And this is where I get really mad. I get cross at certain things in life where I'm thinking, well, why isn't it easier? You know, if you love someone and you have, how could it be this way? It's the same as greed versus homelessness. I just can't get my head around how some have so much and some have so little.
Yes.
And it's like there are certain things in life that just don't make sense. And heartbreak and breakups, just to me, I just don't get it. It's almost like we have to go through lessons and they're here for our soul or for ourselves or whatever. There's something for us to learn. But gosh, what a hard thing to go through. But what I also want to comment on is the fact that through that time, you showed up, you ran your business, you made money for your kids, you covered your staff wages, and you also recorded content where you gave people a platform to share their stories, to uplift their voices, even when you were in the really tough times. How did that feel to come and be on camera in your own studio, to run 2 podcasts when you're going through such a difficult time? How did you actually get yourself out and just press record? How did you get yourself in that seat?
Okay, I think it was a really good thing that we had a batch of podcasts booked in, because I think if I hadn't, maybe it would have slowed down or potentially stopped. But because it did, and I hate letting anyone down, I was like, right, well, it's happening. And I remember that. 2024, I think I cried every day. And not just like a little bit. I've never cried so much. I didn't even know that was possible. Before this, I wasn't an overly emotional person. And I remember having a little cry in the car. That was often my safe crying space when the children were being dropped at school on the way. And I was like, right, I'm going into the studio now. You have to put your podcast recording hat on. You literally got one. And you've just got to crack on. But what was like even harder was listening to other people's hardships and their stories. It was harder in a way because I was so triggered by anything. I felt everything for everyone in that moment. Even news stories, I'd be breaking down crying. But equally, it also gave me incredible perspective, because everyone faces tough battles. I think you have to be incredibly lucky to get through life and nothing to affect you significantly. And like you say, there's always lessons, because it is like, why, like you said, why are all these hardships that people face? And I think it is about the lessons. And a spiritual person I know says that before you enter the life, you sign a soul contract about what you're willing to face in life and what you're willing to learn from it. And knowing myself, I don't like to make things easy. And I sometimes can see, right, yes, I can see why I would do that. But yeah, it helped actually. And then once I'd got that recording done, right, well, I'm booking the next one in before I even had time to think about not doing it. And it made me also think how important it is to give people a voice and for them to be heard and their stories to be heard, because it matters so much and it can help other people going through it. And that's why I don't mind speaking about my story, because I think it's important for people to relate to. In that moment in time, you can feel so lost and lonely. And you might have lots of friends, but they can't relate to it exactly. And I think it's so important to share different stories about different things people have faced, so people can, it helps them for a start to get it out, get it off their chest, but other people can learn so much.
But also there's something about a personal evolution. So all of us grow, hopefully, through our lives, and we learn and we change and we grow and evolve. So the person you were at 25 is going to be different to the version of you now, as
100%.
would have been different to 7 years ago when you first had your first baby, you know? So
yeah,
it really is a journey. And that's what I love, is that as humans, we're fluid. I am someone who believes in forgiveness, who believes in second chances, who believes that we always have the capacity for good. Your thing about the soul contracts and things we sign up to before we come to this world, I've thought about this before. I'm a spiritual person too. I've explored things like this, and I still struggle with it, because I'm like, why would you put yourself through that? Like, why? But we don't know what the wider picture is, or, you know, and I think there is something about mindset and going, okay, I'm in this situation, what can I learn from it, as you've said. So I love that you are giving people voices and that you have the courage to talk about stuff. And I think that's really powerful. So let's talk about that for a minute. So you've got 2 podcasts, very different audiences, very different styles of shows. And one of them is much more personal than the other. So do you want to share about those 2?
Yeah, thank you. So PRsonal is all about getting to know the real person behind the professional. I'd wanted to start it for so long, but then I was having my babies and going through horrific pregnancy sickness with both. So I was just like, there's no way I was going on camera or had the capacity. But it's so important. You meet so many people in business. And again, this is changing over the years, but certainly at the start of my business journey, and you'd have so much small talk, and small talk is annoying at the best of times, especially for a deep person like me. You just want to get to the heart of, you know, what makes someone tick, what affects them, what makes them who they are. And, you know, you could sit across someone in an office every day and not truly know them, and not truly know their struggles, what they're going through. But it wasn't until I had my first miscarriage that for the first time I felt I couldn't be totally honest in business. I had to cancel some meetings because I was literally in that moment going through it. And I was picking up the phone and I was like, what do I say? Do I just invent a cold? Because I hate, as I've mentioned, letting people down. When I've made a commitment, I like to stick to it. Whether it's a meeting or anything. And I just thought, why am I so, I felt shame. I felt shame that I couldn't share the real reason that I couldn't attend that meeting. And then I questioned, why am I feeling shame about the fact I'm having a miscarriage? I've done nothing wrong. it's just happening right now. And then I was like, well, you just don't talk about these sort of things in business. Well, why? Why don't you talk about things like that? What if there's other people going through that? What if there's other people going through other situations they can't talk about and it's affecting them negatively? And I totally understand that some people don't want to talk about things, and that's totally fine too. But for the people that do, I feel the only way we can do that is to talk about it. So I just said on the phone, I'm so sorry, I'm having a miscarriage. And actually, the person on the phone said, oh my goodness, we've been through that this year too. And now it's another business friend. They are actually a business friend and a friend as well, because one of us was brave enough to open that conversation. The other one had that conversation as well. And we shared kind of our fears and vulnerabilities going through that. So I think it's so important to do that. And so, yeah, by giving people a voice on that podcast, I hope to eradicate shame in a business setting. We could talk about things like that. Periods is another one. We talk about that quite often on the podcast, but how many times, especially in the early days, I didn't dare mention it. I'd shuffled some tampons into my pockets and no one could see, even in an office of women, and go to the toilet. And there's a lot being done about that. Like, you leave your products on your desk. It helps create humans. So that's that podcast, and a very long-winded answer, sorry. And then there's the PR podcast, which is the shorter one, just a pocket-sized PR podcast, where it's short, distilled portions of PR wisdom to help people learn about the communications industry, to even help kind of communications professionals learn about the specialism of PR, because PR has kind of lost its way a little bit in this digital world that we live in now. So I want people to see practical examples of how it can genuinely help businesses, hoping to encourage more people to use it as a communications tool.
I think people, gosh, there's so much to respond to there.
Sorry.
I think just on the PR point very quickly, there is so much in this world of AI and stuff that you can't even tell what's AI or not anymore, or you don't even know what's you, or it's just so hard to try and figure out who's real and who's not. And I think you've talked about this quite a lot, and I love how you speak on this, but there will be a resurgence of traditional PR because we need it. We need to have things that are fact-checked, that are verified, that are put out, but also crisis comms. I think it's going to be more and more important, and I'd love to hear your perspective on that. I mean, where do you stand on crisis comms? Do you think we're going to need them more as things shift? One of my thoughts on that is there's so many topical issues that are coming up, and I think businesses aren't always ahead of that. And so it could be employment discrimination, or it could be things where maybe we haven't fully thought about something. We've always done something a certain way, but we're not realizing it might maybe marginalize someone or things like this. So I'm curious from your perspective on PR and where it's going now.
Absolutely. It's a scary world out there. You say one thing that's meant well-intended, it's taken totally the wrong way, and you could lose your job, you could lose your business overnight. And that's an extreme example, but it does happen. Social media, everyone has a voice, which is a good thing. But sometimes they can say something very negative. It might not necessarily be true. Rumors can spread like wildfire. Sometimes it can be true. Things slip out on there. With AI, nobody knows what's real anymore. Fake news, that's been around before AI. And even now, you'll see yourself on social media and you see something and it could be incredible, but you're like, is it real? And that's a massive question we need to ask ourselves before everything these days. One thing that's good about AI is it trusts trusted news sources more and more. But then again, what is trusted? Even like the big news stations, you're just not quite sure. So it's just a very difficult world out there. I feel that we almost have to take on this role as PR agents or PR consultants as brand custodians. So it's more about shifting from not just building your brand, but protecting it as you build. And protection in the brand building has always been important, but never as important as now. So it's almost like create your brand, protect it, build it a bit, protect it. So you're building in these layers of protection along the lines. And a lot of that comes down to listening. And there's so many channels to listen out on. Listening, watching, learning. What are people saying about your brand? How can you adapt? How can you improve? How can you simply say thank you sometimes? So there's a lot to do. And a lot of it comes down to planning when it comes to crisis communications. Thinking about the main risks that could affect your business, how to protect yourself around that. We liken it to the fire analogy of a fire. If there's a tiny little spark, putting it out before it burns the whole place down, burns the whole business down. Having a crisis communications plan is like having a fire extinguisher, so you're ready to act, because immediacy is critical in today's world.
Yeah, I think that's so powerful. And you're right. There is so much to think about and to check and fact check. And I love what you said about being a custodian of brands. I think that's really important. It's almost like you're stewarding your clients' brands, but also for ourselves, we're stewarding our image or our brand.
Yes.
One of the things I've been reflecting on a lot is I listen to all kinds of different podcasters, and I listen to some of the big players, you know, and there's some that I'm a big fan of, like Chris Williamson or others. And sometimes I have people on their show that I don't necessarily agree with, or I'm worried about their views, or I'm like, wow, that's a totally different perspective to what I've thought before. And what I'm curious about from your perspective is this idea of platforming people. So there's so much I don't necessarily share on my show. I always trying to be myself and authentic, but you know, you might say something and just think of it as like a one-off comment, but all of a sudden people approach you in the supermarket or at a networking event and say, hey, you did this thing, or and they quote your life back to you, and you think, what happened there? Like, how do you know that? So you start to realize how powerful your voice can be. And if you call people out, or if you speak on a topic without fully knowing about it, it can actually be hurtful. But one of the things that I know is important is we're only as up to date as what we are today. You know,
Yes.
We might change and learn and grow, but we're at this point in time today. So whatever we say today is right, or right for us today.
Yes.
But it is quite a thing that I think about a lot. And I wonder, from your perspective, you know, we've got these huge people like Joe Rogan. They've created brands for themselves. They've created platforms for themselves that news agents or companies will actually go to them for their comment or look at what they're saying. They're almost outside the law. They're outside governance. They're outside national viewpoints. And so there's it's really powerful actually how podcasting can give you a platform that helps you to, maybe you might get dropped by a brand, but actually there's going to be other brand deals that are going to align with you because of your views. But it's also dangerous because we've got this right wing views and we've got left wing views, and sometimes they're too far either side. So I just wonder where you stand on that and your thought of like curating your brand, but also what about as you're speaking and not even conscious of what you might do?
Yeah, and it is a scary world when you think too much about it. And I think sometimes the secret can be to just stay true to your heart, how you feel in that moment. Because if you think too much about everything and how everyone's going to respond, there's always going to be someone who takes offense. And I think that can be the problem today, that too many people aren't willing to speak their true thoughts and opinions because they worry about upsetting, offending, or even getting into trouble for it. And I think as humans, we need to be more empathetic to the fact that people have different opinions and be willing to listen to those. You don't need to necessarily believe those, but they can also help shape how you feel about things. And yeah, it's really important to listen and also be vulnerable and just to acknowledge the fact, like what you said, this is how I think and feel now based on my experiences in life to date. It doesn't mean I'm right, doesn't mean I'm wrong. You know, it's just an opinion, it's my feelings. And know that I could have said something just now in this podcast alone where if I'd had a totally different upbringing, or that could totally change over the next year based on what I experience next year. And I think it's just knowing that as humans, we are malleable, our thoughts change, our feelings change based on experience, and to just listen respectfully and then form our own thoughts and opinions. That's all I can say really, because there's no right answer.
I think that's really powerful. And I think this is the thing, is when we ask all these questions, we block ourselves. So if we have a passion and we want to talk about it, and podcasting can be so powerful for that. It can uplift stories, it can share stories, it can bring people together from all over the world. At the same time, if you block yourself by being too scared to say what you think or what you're working through, then you're also taking away those learning opportunities for all of those people who would usually listen. So I see that a lot with clients I work with, where they're just so afraid of what will people think that they just can never put it out there.
Yeah.
And I go through that at times myself.
Me too.
And I think it's great. You know, it's actually really encouraging to hear what you're saying about exploring them, but also being a custodian of the things we're building. So something that really connected with me with when you were talking about this sense of worthlessness and going through really tricky feelings of devastation, of how you were going through this horrendous time. At that time where you felt you had no value, but you had these amazing kids, you're still looking after them, you're pouring all your love into them, but you've got so much on your plate. Was there a time where you felt, oh my gosh, I just don't feel like me anymore. I don't look like me. Did you ever feel a need to kind of glow up? Or did you ever feel conscious of how you show up in the world and the energy? And you know, yeah, I would imagine that going through a divorce, I haven't been through it myself, but any relationship ending, there's this grieving stage, but you also feel like, well, now I've lost this identity, I've lost this personal part of myself. And I just wonder how you might feel about that looking back.
Yeah, I lost my spark is the best way of putting it. I also lost nearly 2 stone, which has a physical impact and how you look. I looked washed out, I looked gaunt. I looked everything I felt inside. And in a weird way, I wanted people to see that. But not that that was intentional that I tried that, but just it was almost like, look, I'm looking at this because this is how I am.
Almost like a look at my pain, this is what I'm feeling.
Kind of. Not that I intentionally created it for that, but if I'd looked sparkling and full of life, it wouldn't have felt authentic at the time. So it's like, it's fine to look like this because that's how I feel. I did look different. I feel like if you're happy in your heart and happy within, it does glow and radiate out of you. And it was the opposite. I generally before that was quite happy with how I looked in terms of, I was a mother. I've never been one to massively take a lot of pride in self-care. I don't even own hair straighteners, things like that. It changes everything because you think you're with someone who will love you for the rest of your life, for who you are and how you look. And then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, that's not true. And it makes you, again, it adds that the layer of worthlessness isn't just your personality and everything you have to give from that sense, it's physically, and you take it personally. Well, it is personal. And I cut my hair. I don't think I'd even had hair shorter than this ever since I was like 1. I came out of the womb with hair pretty much like so long. That was all part of me shedding a new kind of layer, wanting to look different. I felt I had to create a different look, even though I don't look a million miles away, but I desperately wanted to look different. I don't know why, but I felt that I needed to become someone else and create this new identity. Maybe it was part of rediscovering my new identity. And I did start taking a bit more pride in my appearance, almost for me. I felt I had to try and kickstart something that made me feel valuable. And yes, so it changed everything in that respect. There's even silly little things, like I've got quite a lot of moles, and when you're sometimes pregnant, you get more. And it never bothered me. And then now you look at your body and your face from someone to try and attract someone new in the future. It's not my main goal right now, but I would like that longer term. And you think, my goodness, I want to feel attractive to attract in a weird way. Whereas, I don't know, it changes everything about how you see yourself. But definitely I felt the need for a glow up, and I like to think I did try and create a mini one.
It's so funny you talk about cutting your hair, because you're right. When I think of Charlotte from Harvey and Hugo, and I think of the Charlotte that I've seen on brand and stuff, it's always been the long hair and the 2 dogs, and everything. It's the long hair.
Yeah.
So I recall, actually, I didn't know what you'd been going through, but when you cut your hair, I do remember seeing that and thinking, wow, that's radical, because it was so different, you know? And I do think you've glowed up, and I love seeing you on stages and stepping into a new presence and a magnetism that I think you have. And I think it's really important for us to remember that we can be different versions of ourselves, and all of them are beautiful, the dark, the shadows, the light in between, so I'm here for you in whatever way you're feeling and how you are. But I also think that's really, really powerful for us to hear, that it's a journey and it's a process, and it's a sense of grieving and almost like scraping off all that stuff now and putting it down and kind of stepping into this new light of version.
Absolutely.
And, I guess what I would love to know is, are you dating yourself?
dating myself. In terms of like taking myself out on dates rather than dating other people.
Yeah.
Do you know what? It's a massive goal for me this year. And it's something that I have realised I'm never that kind to myself. I don't think I love myself enough. And it's something that I'm really working on. And I think feeling proud is an element towards that. I feel I can look back on the last 2 years and I feel proud of how mostly myself as a mother. And that makes me want to love myself. And it's so important that we all do. It sounds terribly cheesy, but we have to. And yes, I want to feel comfortable and happy and full of worth just as me, without any of the contributing factors, certainly without a partner. I need to feel that for myself before I'm willing to date other people. And I'm dating myself. I love spending time with myself. Even if it's just a little bit of peace in the house. I get a lot of joy out of podcasting. Yes, it's part of work, but it's also a hobby. I enjoy learning about other people, which in turn helps me learn about myself. So yes, I'm in a good space and I'm ready to kind of start being more kind. And like I say, I need to leave a lot of what I've learned and what I've experienced behind me this year. It's all about moving forwards.
Yeah, sometimes my lovely friend Anne English has this fantastic clarity quest that it's a program that I've done before, but on that program there's an exercise I love where you take the stickers off the suitcase. So it's like your lost property. So back in the day, people before package holidays and stuff, they would go on the ships and they'd have stickers of where they'd been.
Oh, that's cool.
And so, but where have we been that we can now start to peel those stickers and layers off that aren't valid anymore? They scruffy, like it's just leaving parts of yourself and cleaning up your suitcase. And I just love this idea of we get to curate the stories we take forward with us. It's really beautiful.
That's powerful.
So I guess my last and important question for you is, what's your one word to nurture your zest?
I think it'll have to be rise.
Rise, that's beautiful. What does that mean to you?
You're always, I think, going to experience pain and dark times, and you have to go through it and you have to feel it in the moment, but then you have to rise above it. You have to learn your lessons, take all the pain to transform yourself and rise above it.
So it's almost like transmuting it into something else. That's beautiful. Yeah. I love it. Thank you very much for sharing.
Thank you, Ashleigh.
Thank you so much for listening to Nurture Your Zest today. If you're feeling extra kind, it would mean so much to me if you could share this episode with your friends or family or anyone who you think might feel inspired by this content. Liking, sharing, or interacting with our content is a great way to support us as content creators, and it helps us to bring interesting stories and more people to you. This podcast is a Flamingo Heights podcast studio production, and I've been your host, Ashleigh King. If you liked today's episode, follow the video on your screen now, or check out the link in your show notes to find similar content.